Seeing the rich bride on the mortuary table, the attendant couldn't resist and placed a ring. In the midst of mourning and darkness, an act of kindness illuminates a life. Jack, a dedicated man, finds solace in an unexpected feline friend. But when the past returns in an unexpected way, old feelings and long-buried secrets emerge. A rare medical condition, a surprising twist, and a choice that could change everything. Sometimes, life gives us a second chance. Jack and Mike had worked together at the Eternal Rest Funeral Home for many years. Jack, the older one, was a man with a calm and compassionate temperament, always treating each deceased and their families with the utmost respect and empathy. Mike, on the other hand, was young and ambitious, constantly looking for ways to make extra money, not always ethically. The difference between the two was evident to anyone who observed them, but somehow they managed to work in harmony. On a cold autumn morning in Boston, Jack was on his usual morning shift when he heard a faint meow coming from the alley next to the funeral home. Curious, he went to investigate and found an emaciated and dirty kitten curled up between some cardboard boxes. Jack, with his compassionate heart, didn't think twice before picking up the kitten and taking it inside. He cleaned it up, fed it, and decided to name it Snoopy. Mike looked at the cat with disdain when he saw Jack bringing it inside. "Jack, this is a funeral home, not an animal shelter," he grumbled. Jack just smiled and continued taking care of Snoopy, believing the cat needed a home as much as anyone needed rest. Snoopy soon became part of the funeral home's routine. He followed Jack everywhere, comforting him on tough days and offering a welcome distraction from the grim reality of the job. Jack felt that Snoopy was a little ray of sunshine in a place full of sadness. The days passed slowly at the funeral home. Mike, always focused on maximizing his earnings, often suggested extra services to grieving families, frequently exaggerating their necessity. Jack didn't approve of these practices, but he knew Mike had good intentions, albeit misguided. The work routine at the funeral home was heavy, and Jack felt that Snoopy brought a bit of lightness to his days. He grew attached to the cat, who seemed to understand every emotion Jack expressed. In moments of deep sadness, Snoopy would curl up in his lap, purring softly, as if he knew exactly what Jack needed. One night, as Jack was closing the funeral home, Mike approached with a sly smile on his face. "Jack, I got us some extra work. We're going to embalm some bodies for a funeral home in another town. They pay well. What do you think?" Mike suggested. Jack sighed, hesitating. "Mike, I don't know. I don't like doing this just for the money. Every body is a life that deserves respect," Jack responded. Mike rolled his eyes. "You're always so moralistic, Jack. It's just work, and a little more money won't hurt anyone," he insisted. Jack, however, stood his ground. "I understand, Mike, but I think we should consider the families we're serving. They trust us to take care of their loved ones." "I can't do this just for money," Jack said, ending the conversation. Though frustrated, Mike knew Jack was right. He respected his friend, even if he didn't fully understand his ethics. Snoopy, as always, watched the scene closely, his bright eyes seeming to catch every word. That night, as Jack reflected on his conversation with Mike, he remembered a situation from a few years ago. There was a client who, in desperation, offered a large sum of money to speed up the preparation of a loved one's body. Jack refused, explaining that dignity and respect for the deceased were more important than any amount of money. This episode was a turning point in Jack's career, reinforcing his conviction that working at the funeral home was more than a means of earning a living. It was a mission of respect and compassion. Jack went home with Snoopy, feeling a weight on his heart. He knew his work was important, but the sadness of grieving families was sometimes too much to bear. Having Snoopy by his side made everything seem a little easier. The little cat had become his constant companion, a symbol of hope amid the darkness. And so, the days at the Eternal Rest Funeral Home continued, with Jack and Mike facing challenges and learning from every experience. Jack knew that, regardless of the difficulties, he had a mission to bring comfort and dignity to those who had passed and their families. And with Snoopy by his side, he felt he could face anything. It was a quiet afternoon when the funeral home's doorbell rang. Mike promptly answered, always eager to welcome new clients. When he opened the door, he was met by an anguished man holding a death certificate. "My daughter, she died yesterday on her wedding day," the man said, his voice choked. Mike took the documents and, without realizing the gravity of the situation, asked them to bring the young woman's body. He then began the initial preparations. When the body arrived, Mike was surprised by the young woman's beauty, even in her state of death. Something about her seemed strangely familiar, but he couldn't place why. "Jack, can you come here for a minute?" Mike called, trying to hide his unease. Jack entered the room, and upon seeing the young woman's body, he froze. That was Emily, the woman he had been madly in love with years ago. She had apparently died of a heart attack on her wedding day. Jack felt a whirlwind of emotions, from deep sadness to painful nostalgia. Mike, noticing the impact Emily had on Jack, approached his friend. "Did you know her?" he asked, with a rare tone of empathy. Jack nodded, unable to speak. He always carried an engagement ring in his pocket, a symbol of the love he had for Emily. Without thinking much, he took the ring and placed it on the young deceased woman's finger. When he touched her hand, he noticed something strange. Her hand was warm. Jack immediately remembered a similar situation that had occurred years ago. Emily suffered from a rare medical condition that, under extreme stress, made her appear dead. Her body would enter a state of hibernation, with a pulse and respiration almost imperceptible. Remembering this, Jack immediately called a medical team. Paramedics arrived quickly and confirmed Jack's suspicions. Emily was not dead. She was in a catatonic state due to her condition. Carefully, they took her to the hospital to receive the necessary treatment. As Emily was treated, Jack couldn't stop thinking about what could have happened. Why had she been declared dead so hastily? And what had happened in her life to bring her to such a point of stress? In the hospital, Emily was carefully monitored and treated. Gradually, she began to regain consciousness. When she finally opened her eyes, Jack was by her side, holding her hand. She smiled, recognizing the man she had never forgotten. "Jack," Emily whispered, her voice weak but full of emotion. Jack squeezed her hand, feeling an indescribable relief. They spent hours talking, reminiscing about the past and sharing their experiences since they last saw each other. Emily told how her abusive ex-fiancé had pushed her to the limit, causing a burnout that almost killed her. The following days were full of reflection for Jack. He knew that life had given him a second chance to be with Emily, and he didn't want to waste this opportunity. During this time, Mike watched everything from afar, starting to rethink his own attitudes toward life and work. The reunion of Jack and Emily had a profound impact on everyone around them, showing the fragility and beauty of life. Mike began to reflect more deeply on his actions and decisions. He remembered a conversation he had with his grandfather, who always said, "Life is short, Mike. Don't waste it chasing things that don't matter." This memory made him question the path he had chosen and whether the choices he was making truly brought him happiness. Jack and Mike spent the following days reflecting on everything that had happened. For Jack, reuniting with Emily was a second chance to correct the mistakes of the past and find the happiness he had always desired. For Mike, the experience was a lesson in the true value of life and the importance of treating every moment with respect and compassion. Meanwhile, Emily was slowly recovering in the hospital. Jack was always by her side, holding her hand and whispering words of comfort. He wanted to make sure she knew she wasn't alone and that he would do everything in his power to help her recover. Emily, in turn, was grateful for Jack's constant presence. She knew that without him, she might never have been rescued from her catatonic state. One day, while Jack was at the hospital with Emily, Mike decided to visit. He wanted to see for himself how the young woman who had such an impact on his friend's life was doing. Upon arriving at the hospital room, he found Jack and Emily in a quiet conversation. Mike hesitated for a moment before entering, feeling a bit out of place. "Hi, Emily. I'm Mike, Jack's friend. We work together at the funeral home," he said, trying to sound friendly. Emily smiled, though she still seemed weak. "Hi, Mike. Thank you for everything you've done. I know it was difficult for everyone," she responded, with gratitude in her voice. Mike sat next to Jack, observing the delicacy with which he cared for Emily. That scene made him reflect on his own priorities. He had always pursued profit above all else, but seeing Jack and Emily together, fighting for something deeper, made him question his choices. As the days passed, Emily began to recover more quickly. Jack's constant presence by her side, combined with the medical care, made all the difference. They spent hours talking about the past, recalling happy and sad moments. Emily told Jack about her abusive ex-fiancé, explaining how the toxic relationship had led to her burnout. "He pushed me too hard, Jack. Nothing was ever good enough. I was always stressed, always afraid of making mistakes. Even on our wedding day, he made me feel like everything was my fault," Emily vented, tears streaming down her face. Jack held her hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm so sorry you went through that, Emily. I promise you're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you again," he said, his voice firm. Emily smiled through her tears, finally feeling relieved. She knew Jack was different. He had always treated her with respect and kindness, and now she had the chance to start over with him. The prospect of a future together gave her the strength she needed to keep fighting. Mike, watching the relationship between Jack and Emily, began to realize that the true value of life wasn't in money, but in human connections and love. He decided he needed to change his approach, both at work and in his personal life. Inspired by Jack's example, Mike began treating every client at the funeral home with more respect and compassion, understanding that each one had a story and a legacy to be honored. Mike reflected on his past, remembering how his greed had driven away important people in his life. He thought about his parents, who always advised him to find happiness in simple things, but he had ignored this advice in pursuit of financial success. Now, he saw how wrong he had been and decided to change, starting to value the little things and the relationships he had neglected. Days passed, and Emily continued to recover. Jack never left her side, accompanying every step of her recovery with dedication and love. Jack's presence was a constant comfort for Emily, and she knew he would be the anchor that would help her overcome this difficult phase. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, Mike began to show signs of change. He started treating grieving families with more empathy, leaving behind his greedy behavior. He finally understood the value of compassion and respect, inspired by the way Jack had always conducted his work. One day, while Jack and Emily were talking at the hospital, a doctor entered the room with a smile on his face. "Emily, your tests show significant improvement. I believe you'll soon be able to go home," the doctor announced. Jack and Emily looked at each other, smiling with relief. The news brought a new wave of hope to both of them. With Emily's discharge approaching, Jack began making plans for the future. He knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Emily, offering her the security and love she deserved. He also knew they would need a welcoming and peaceful environment to help her continue her recovery. Jack decided it was time to look for a new home, a place where they could start a new life together. As Jack made these plans, Emily also began thinking about the future. She wanted to leave behind the painful past and focus on building a happy life with Jack. She decided it was time to face her fears and move forward, knowing that with Jack by her side, she could overcome any challenge. On the day of Emily's discharge, Jack helped her pack her things at the hospital. He was excited and nervous at the same time, eager to start this new phase of their lives. When they finally left the hospital, Emily felt the sun on her face and took a deep breath, feeling truly alive for the first time in a long time. Jack took Emily to his temporary home, where she could rest and fully recover before they moved to the new house he was searching for. Snoopy, who had been anxiously waiting for them, greeted Emily with a cheerful purr, curling up in her lap as if he knew she needed comfort. As the days passed, Jack and Emily began to adapt to their new routine. Jack continued working at the funeral home, but now returned home every day with the certainty that Emily was waiting for him. They spent their evenings talking, laughing, and planning for the future. Snoopy, always present, was a constant source of joy and comfort. Meanwhile, Mike continued his journey of transformation. He began to understand the true meaning of his work at the funeral home and the importance of treating every life with respect and dignity. The change in his attitude didn't go unnoticed by his colleagues and clients, who now saw Mike as an example of compassion and integrity. Emily's recovery was slow but steady. With Jack's support, she began to regain her confidence and believe in a better future. They finally found a new house, a peaceful and welcoming place where they could start fresh. Emily decorated the house with care, creating a cozy home where she and Jack could be happy together. During this period, Jack remembered a conversation he had with his father before he passed away. His father always said, "True wealth lies in love and the relationships we build." These words remained etched in his mind, and he now saw their truth reflected in his relationship with Emily and his renewed friendship with Mike. Time passed, and Emily fully recovered. She and Jack were ready to start a new phase of their lives, leaving behind the painful past and focusing on the future they wanted to build together. They moved into the new house, a place full of light and hope where they could be happy and create new memories together. On moving day, Mike showed up to help. He was visibly different, more serene and compassionate. "Jack, Emily, I want to thank you both. You've shown me what really matters in life." "Thank you for that," Mike said sincerely. Emily smiled and hugged Mike. "Thank you for everything, Mike. You've helped us a lot too," she replied gratefully. Jack watched the scene with a smile on his face, feeling proud of his friend and how everyone had grown and changed for the better. Jack and Emily's new house was a haven of peace and happiness. They decorated every corner with love, creating a home where they could be truly happy. Snoopy and Emily's parrot, who was now part of the family, brought even more joy to the house. The days passed quickly, filled with moments of joy and companionship. Jack and Emily rediscovered their love, now stronger and deeper than ever. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing dreams and plans for the future. Every day was a celebration of the life and love they shared. Emily, feeling stronger and more confident, decided to resume her career. She was a talented artist and began painting again, creating works that reflected her journey of overcoming and hope. Jack, always supportive, encouraged Emily to follow her dreams and believed in her talent. He knew that together they could achieve anything. Meanwhile, at the funeral home, Mike continued to work with dedication and respect. He had learned to value every life and treat every family with the dignity they deserved. The change in his attitude didn't go unnoticed by his colleagues and clients, who now saw Mike as an example of compassion and integrity. One day, while Jack and Emily were at home, Mike showed up with a surprise. He had adopted a dog from a shelter and wanted to introduce him to the couple. "This is Max. I thought he needed a family as much as I needed a friend," Mike said with a smile. Jack and Emily were moved and welcomed Max, who soon became part of the family. Life continued to follow its course, bringing new challenges and joys. Jack and Emily, strengthened by love and overcoming, faced each day with hope and determination. They knew that, no matter what happened, they would always have each other and a loving family to support and comfort them. As they decorated the new house, Emily found an old photo album. She and Jack spent a night flipping through the photos, reminiscing about special moments and reflecting on how much they had grown and changed. Each photo was a reminder of how much their love had strengthened over time. Jack and Emily's new life was full of hope and happiness. They had overcome so many difficulties together and were now ready to enjoy every moment. With Snoopy and Max by their side, the house was always full of life and joy. Jack was promoted at the funeral home, recognized for his hard work and dedication. He was now responsible for training new employees, passing on the compassion and respect that had always guided his work. Mike, in turn, was also recognized for his transformation and received a position of greater responsibility, where he could continue to make a difference. Emily, with her blossoming artistic talent, held an exhibition of her works. The paintings, which reflected her journey of overcoming, were acclaimed by critics and the public. Emily felt that she was finally living her dreams and enjoying life to the fullest. The family's new routine was full of happy moments. Jack and Emily loved taking Max for walks in the park, where he ran freely, bringing smiles to everyone's faces. Snoopy, always curious, followed Jack around the house, like his little faithful companion. Emily's parrot, with its vibrant colors and captivating personality, was a constant source of fun and joy. Weekends were especially special. Jack and Emily enjoyed hosting small gatherings with friends and family, sharing laughs and good stories. The house was always full of love and happiness, a stark contrast to the dark days of the past. One day, while they were at the park, Emily looked at Jack and smiled. "You know, Jack, I never thought I would find happiness again. But here we are, building a life together, full of love and hope," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. Jack squeezed her hand, feeling a wave of emotion. "Emily, you're the reason my life makes sense. Together, we can overcome anything," he replied with conviction. The years passed quickly, but the love between Jack and Emily only grew stronger. They faced challenges and celebrated achievements, always supporting each other. The journey they began together at the Eternal Rest Funeral Home had brought them to a place of peace and happiness, where they could truly be themselves. Reflecting on everything that had happened, Jack knew that every difficult moment and every hard decision had led them to this point. He looked at Emily, Snoopy, Max, and the parrot with a deep sense of gratitude. Life had been generous, and he was determined to enjoy every second with the people and animals he loved. And so, Jack and Emily continued to build their life together, full of hope and joy. They knew that no matter what the future held, they would always have each other and the certainty that love and compassion were the most powerful forces in the world. In the end, that was the greatest lesson they had learned, that true love can overcome any obstacle and bring light even in the darkest moments.